I love fighting tyranny. And if you don't think warrantless wiretaps and police wearing black ski masks and armored vehicles with hover drones flying over our cities isn't police state, if you don't think free speech zones isn't police state, if you don't think bar fences around schools isn't police state, then you don't know what a police state is. They're trying to bring one in. They're not going to be successful. And they incrementally condition us and brainwash us for the reasons this is happening. The average cop that's part of this, the average security guard, thinks it's okay and doesn't see how they've been incrementally twisted and brought over to the dark side. I remember being at events here in Austin when the APD, Austin Police Department, and I have video of this, had Austin cops, giant guys, like 6'5", 6'4", huge arms, dressed up like anarchists, shoving people, starting fights. This is when the Fortune 500 came here in the late 90s. And I said, come on, cops, stop it. And they ran across the street, and like 50 cops ran across, said, back off, Jones. They inserted 2 more big cops dressed up like anarchists starting fights. So you're going to hear this little newscast. I wanted to analyze this for the propaganda that's in it. Quebec police admit going undercover at Montebello protest. Now, you'd think, and this is during the North American Union meeting, and they said no demonstrations allowed. That was in the news. Again, just like it's Burma, just like this is not freedom in Canada or here. Even though federal courts then tried to block the state and federal police from saying there was a ban. Okay, so the court said they could, because this is the right of any free person, going back to the Magna Carta in 1215. And that's what Canada's under, the same thing that our Bill of Rights and Constitution grew out of. But you'd think this is a positive piece, but it's really not. I mean, the full videos on YouTube, that's what they're showing. There's multiple angles. I've interviewed the people that were there. The cops were hitting people, pushing people, starting fights. And all of a sudden, the union heads run over, and a medical doctor runs over. These are full-grown adults in suits. And they go, hey, you're cops, man. Look at you. Stop provocateuring. That's when the media cuts in. And everybody noticed they had the same boots as the cops. Then they were hitting cops with giant rocks. But they would come up and do a hand signal, and then the cop would bend his head down, and then they would hit him on the head with a rock, and then the cops would then open fire with rubber bullets on peaceful people. You see, they got to stage it. The cop comes up, kneels down, another cop hits him on the head with a rock to then viciously assault the peaceful people. And they did that in Seattle. They hired 50 thugs led by Delta Force. That later came out in the Seattle papers. The Delta Force leading these people. I mean, that's in the U.S. They use special op troops to lead these people. Then they showed cops all over the country. Look, the rioters. See, you've got to get the federal black stormtrooper outfits and the riot gear and learn how to take people to buses and overflow centers like the old airport in Austin or Pier 57 in New York. Let's go ahead and play part of this clip. Here it is.
It was stunning video posted on the internet for all to see, and it came with a charge that police masqueraded as protesters at this week's Montebello summit to incite violence. Tonight, an equally stunning admission from Quebec's provincial police. Susan Bonner reports.
These 3 guys are cops, everybody!
Busted. 3 Quebec provincial police officers, identities masked, one carrying a huge rock,
Hey, put the rock down!
nabbed for infiltrating a peaceful protest at Montebello. The tip-off came from a union leader who noticed riot police standing by despite the obvious weapon.
Now, right there, no, they were hitting people. They were punching other protesters in the back, shoving and cussing and yelling. Now, I saw Austin cops do it, and I got video of it. Now, that is an incredible crime. You've got thousands of people. There was about 500 here in Austin, but thousands there. They just want to say no to the New World Order. They just want their freedom. That most of them were about 50 years of age in suits. People out there with children. And I've seen it from there. I've seen it in Oregon. I've seen it all over. At least in Austin, they didn't go that far because we caught them. And I have seen them walk right up to a baby in a carriage and spray it. This is on the web. Just type police pepper spray baby. And there's a couple instances, but the one that there's one in Genoa, but another in Oregon. And they walk right over to the baby in the crib and spray it and laugh. The mother cries. The baby's about to die. You know, it's like a 6-month-old baby. All this snot's coming out of her. And the cop just screams, "You shouldn't bring a baby." And they just, it's just demon evil, folks. Demon evil. So at the point you just heard that cut, they're shoving people, they're hitting people, they're staging hitting cops with rocks for the media. See, they're going boom, boom, so they could show that later. And they did later attack people, by the way. This is how, and of course they don't add that in the newscast. I mean, let me tell you something. That's like Burma, but they're slicker here. In Burma, they just walk up and shoot the monks. Not here in America or Canada or Genoa or Germany. Not in Italy or Germany or here. It's the same stuff. You see it everywhere. And I frankly have had enough of it. You're committing serious crimes. Oh, by the way, they called us conspiracy theorists for 2 weeks when this first broke. And then later, because people down the street tracked the cops when they staged their arrest and documented their little faces, it came out they were identified as police. And then you had to admit it. You see, you don't like our cameras, do you? You can't do your dirty terrorism anymore. We're going to expose all of it. You're not going to kill us and blow up our buildings anymore either. Now play the rest of it.
He accused the men of being undercover cops trying to provoke a riot and end the protest. The men were removed but never charged. After 2 days of questions, the Sûreté du Québec issued a news release late today confirming, yes, the men are police officers, but denying they were agents provocateurs, claiming they were sent in to identify and stop trouble. They say the police refused to throw stones, committed no crime, and were there to maintain order and security.
There's a serious issue about proper police conduct here.
Criminal lawyer Lawrence Greenspan has defended protesters for decades. He says it's time for politicians to act.
I think the people that represent us in the legislature should be looking at some form of legislation that says, wait a second, this is not a proper use of police resources, and we should be setting guidelines.
Activists have argued for years that police try to thwart their legal right to protest by trying to incite aggression so they can move in and take protesters away. They say they do it even when demonstrators gather in a designated area, as these mostly unionists were in Montebello. And they say politicians tacitly endorse it.
This is the face of it, where people can't even ask a question without having to face these kinds of goons. It's time that all of the secrecy and backroom deals end.
Public Safety Minister Stockwell Day stressed the federal RCMP were not involved, and there is a formal complaints process.
There was also one for the Sûreté du Québec, and this incident happened in Quebec, so I would imagine people could also file under that complaints process also.
The Supreme Court has ruled protesters have the right to be seen and heard. Tonight, both the Quebec and federal governments are facing calls to do more to police the police. Susan Bonner, CBC News, Ottawa.
The point here is, I mean, look, 99% of cops are not involved in this. I want to make that clear. They're out changing tires and going to families, beating each other, and drunk drivers, and it's a tough job, okay? But when you get up into to detectives and intelligence units and all of this, that's all they are. I mean, I've seen it all over the country. I've been in Canada. I've experienced it. I'm so sick of cops walking up to me when I'm in Canada or England covering some elite meeting, and they go, let's start killing people. And I go, oh, and then 10 minutes later I see them get back in their car, and it's an unmarked cop car, and I'm going, oh, you think we're so dumb you pull up with cop plates? We're not the ones that want to kill people. We're not the ones blowing up buildings. We're not the ones provocateuring. Let me tell you something. In some cases, it's so sophisticated that big foundations fund jets landing with hundreds of trained anarchists, and they're trained literally at military training camps. I even have newscasts of this out of Washington State. And the cops command them with sometimes Army Special Forces detail, if any type of president or vice president's involved at an event. And that's a military mindset. Well, the protest could get out of hand, so we'll go ahead and start an incident and burn some trash cans and knock out windows so the media can tape that. Then we'll fall back and stay in this government building. We even know what building they stayed in Seattle. And then we can attack all the peaceful people. It's just a military operation. We cannot have security with protesters. Therefore, we'll set them up. That is the opposite of America. That is the opposite of our republic. That is the opposite of what all this country is about. And I am getting sick and tired of getting these videos that pop out every day of police pulling people over. Because now most people carry cameras. They just turn the camera on, lay it in the seat, and the cop says, listen, I think I'm going to go ahead and frame you. And we see these videos all the time.